Buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to get real political up in here. And I can't think of a single way to address this critical topic, critical to the open source industry, critical to the tech industry, without it getting real political. So I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I'm not gonna waffle on my words here. I'm just gonna tell it like it is. The inclusivity activists in the world of open source and the tech industry in general are absolutely destroying the free and open source projects and the free and open source world that we know, love, and appreciate. Just absolutely ripping it to shreds. And I'm going to be very, very clear about this. Whatever your personal political leanings are, I just don't care, because the reality is all, and I mean 100%, possibly more if that's possible, of the inclusivity activists that are just ripping things apart, that are calling people Nazis, that are creating exclusionary and discriminatory and racist and bigoted policies, that are just destroying projects, are all left-wing politically. All of them. None, without exception. And I challenge any of you to find any of them that are centrist or right-leaning. None. They are all extreme, hard, left-leaning people, and they are ripping things apart. And I'm going to go through a few examples here from the Lunduke Journal's reporting, plus a few other things, over the last year. But it is a lot, and it is tremendous, and I think it is nearly impossible for a person to be in and absorbed with the open source world, working on open source projects, Linux or BSD or just application projects or web dev projects and the like, without being confronted with exactly what we're about to talk about regularly. It is nonstop. For example, the NixOS project. This was a big one from a couple months back. They committed a purge, their words, of Nazis and forced the abdication. They basically forced out the guy who founded the project, all because the Nazis, I'm using the bunny air quotes there, didn't have the exact same political ideas outside of the project that the people in power had, right? The extreme left-wing extremists, these inclusivity activists, the DEI woke activists, whatever you want to call them, they have a set of political ideas that are extreme left-wing ideas. They're not even socialist. They're extreme Marxist and communist ideas. And I'm not saying those words to try and rile people up like, oh my gosh, we got to get the red menace. No. I'm just using those words to describe who they are, because it is one very clear subset of individuals within open source and free software projects, and within many tech companies as well. It is very clear, right? Whether you agree with their politics or not is irrelevant. Whether I agree with them or not, whether I think, oh yes, Marxism and communism is good or bad, it doesn't matter. That's who they are, and these are the people that are ripping things apart. Now, they committed this purge, as they called it. They proudly declared that they were purging the Nazis because they were afraid that if people who were centrist were allowed to exist within the NixOS community, that would turn NixOS, that Linux distribution, into a, quote, I'm not kidding here, Nazi bar, meaning a whole bunch of Nazis will hang out there. Because if you're a centrist, you're labeled as a Nazi. Now, this is the opposite of inclusivity. This is exclusivity. This is discrimination. And in fact, in many countries, this is criminal. You can't go around just calling people Nazis. That's a real thing. And that is either libel or slander in some countries as well. And so this is happening throughout the entirety of the Linux and BSD and open source worlds. To continue, another example that I find absolutely just dumbfounding. And it's a good description, a good example of, excuse me, of how absolutely and utterly ridiculous this can get. The Ladybird web browser, right? Many of you know about Ladybird. It came out of the Serenity OS project, Excellent open source project. Absolutely fantastic. It's not quite a usable daily driver web browser at this point, but they're working towards creating a completely from scratch open source alternative web browser engine. How awesome is that, right? Well, as soon as they started making news, the extreme leftists, right? And I'm talking extreme. Like if you're like, oh my gosh, if you're a regular run-of-the-mill, normal, moderate Democrat type of person, I'm not talking about you. These people are extreme leftists, right? The inclusivity activists, they scoured through every commit and bug report and a social media post by the Ladybird and Serenity OS project and by the guy who created the project to find something to get upset about. And so they started attacking that project for being transphobic and supporting, and this is not even a joke, coming up with ways where they can claim that Ladybird as a web browser was supporting human slavery. That's a real thing. By the way, you can go find all these articles at Lunduke Journal at lunduke.locals.com if you want to read all of the details. It's nuts, right? So wild, crazy, meritless accusations. And they, in some cases, labeled them a Nazi. They like to bring out the Nazi word over and over again. They labeled the Ladybird developer a Nazi and a white supremacist and a transphobe. And here's the thing. Now, no matter what that developer does, it doesn't matter because forever, this group of extreme leftist activists will always label the developer of Ladybird a Nazi, transphobe, human slave trader. I guess it's crazy. There's nothing that developer can do to change that. That group will always attack and label him for that. It doesn't matter if he apologizes. It doesn't matter if he makes public statements. It doesn't matter if he corrects them. He's like, no, I am in fact not a slave owner and have never supported human slavery. It doesn't matter what he says. That group will always attack him. And now they will attack anyone related to that project, right? Again, exclusivity, discrimination, just nonstop, and it's all left leaning. I also want to talk a little bit about Hyprland because this is an interesting one. People from inside Red Hat, right, owned by IBM, which we'll talk about more of them in a minute, they sought out and managed to ban the lead developer and creator of Hyprland, which Hyprland, let me bring this up here, is a tiling window manager and compositor that sits on top of Wayland as the display server, and it looks very, very nice. They've done a lot of work on it over the last few years, and it's got a lot of visual eye candy and whatnot, and so it's kind of built a little bit of a name for itself. Hyprland has grown in popularity, and as it grew in popularity, excuse me, people began trying to find ways to attack that guy, because the guy who was leading that project, who created that project, wasn't immediately bowing down, bending the knee to extreme leftist politics, right? He was saying things like, it doesn't matter what politics people have, they can be part of the Hyprland project. Well, he started making those statements, and that enraged the extreme leftists. So what did they do? Well, they didn't seek inclusivity. They didn't seek to understand his viewpoints. They banned him from the entire free desktop project, which results in multiple problems because he's developing a tiling window manager and compositor that sits on top of Wayland. He kind of needs to be part of the free desktop project going forward, but they made a point of not allowing him to be there, which further completely fractures a significant portion of the Linux software ecosystem. And they did this on purpose. Again, extreme leftists, inclusivity activists seeking to exclude people, fracture people, and discriminate people. I want to mention something here. About a year ago, Vaxry is his name. He's the lead developer behind Hyprland. Made a post that really just enraged them even further. And that was, and I quote, "Inclusive community activists are harming free and open source software." Yeah. I'm going to read a few lines from this blog post that he made, because it's nice to see. It's nice to see people standing up for themselves and people standing up for not being discriminated against. And the lead developer of Hyprland did that here. Quote, "What this article is about is people, by some referred to as social justice warriors, who will go out of their way to try and influence other communities or their members that operate differently to what they would believe is, quote, right. Those that ignore morals, resort to lies, targeted hate, and more against those they disagree with. Those that seem to seek conflict at all costs." This article is probably going to be pretty negative overall. And he goes on to show how, basically this group started attacking him and calling him a Nazi and making literally bug reports about how he's a Nazi, right? They made bug reports of Hyprland about how the developer of Hyprland is a Nazi. Now, is he a Nazi? Well, it sure doesn't look like he is. In fact, he's done nothing that would suggest he's a member of the National Socialist Party in Germany. So no, not a Nazi. That's how that works. I've never even seen him express any ideas that would be in alignment with the Nazi Party. But that doesn't matter. The extreme leftists, the inclusivity activists, they don't like that he's being inclusive, right? He actually goes on and makes this following statement. Quote, this is his closing thoughts here. "I firmly believe that free and open source software is literally for everyone. Unlike those people, I stand by my stance that even if you are something that the country I live in disagrees with, you are still free to use, contribute to, and be a part of the greater and free and open source software community. It's important to note that there are many people who disagree on the topics like religion, economic systems, LGBT issues, geopolitics, and other. For whatever reason they may, we still should not ostracize them as long as they can interact with the free and open source software community in a respectful manner without arguing about these issues in places not meant for such discussions." Very, very direct, right? He made that sort of statement, which is a sort of statement that some years back would have been declared as, oh my gosh, this is such an inclusive statement. This is such a welcoming statement. Everyone is welcome, right? No matter what your thoughts are or who you claim to be, it doesn't matter, you're welcome in this community. The developer of Hyprland is saying, whoever you are welcome. And he got attacked even more after making these sorts of statements. Why? Because he was being actually inclusive. Because the inclusivity activists are not actually inclusive. And I got to repeat this over and over. They are being exclusive. They are literally changing the definitions of words so they can claim to be something that they are absolutely not. And by doing so, they are actively destroying the world of free and open source software, just obliterating it. And I'm not talking about this because I want to change people's politics. I'm talking about this because I would very much like to save the world of free and open source software from just being ripped to shreds. A few more examples. Some open source projects, including some Linux distributions, have gone so far as to declare complete and total war on anyone who is not Marxist, communist, or extreme left-wing socialist, right? So if you're moderate, centrists, right-leaning, anything, essentially, 90% of humanity, if you're any of those groups, Elementary OS and Asahi Linux have declared that they don't want you around, right? They declared that you're evil. They have repeatedly called you Nazis. They don't want you as users. They would refuse you as being contributors to their projects. And again, exclusion, division, ripping things apart. This is an ongoing thing. openSUSE and SUSE did the same thing. And full disclosure, I used to sit on the board of directors of openSUSE, and I used to work for SUSE for many years. But in recent years, They've gone to the point where they have made firm statements that they dislike anything that is conservative, that they abhor conservative people, that if you do not actively wave the transgendered and LGBT blah, blah, blah flag, you like literally actively promote it, then they call you rotten flesh. Now, they're not saying that they're trying to make sure that people are accepting of LGBT people. No. That's not it. What they have declared is that you must actively wave that flag that promotes transgenderism. And if you do not, that you are not welcome in the openSUSE project in any way, shape, or form. And they acted on that. They called all of those people rotten flesh that needs to be cut out. And they declared, and this was coming from SUSE employees, openSUSE board members, past openSUSE board members, the moderators of openSUSE, the whole kit and caboodle. They declared that they would hope that after they kick you out of the openSUSE Linux project, that you would be, quote, unwelcome anywhere in the Linux world. Anywhere in open source, right? So their goal, their literal goal, is to find anyone who doesn't actively and fiercely promote their specific political agenda and ostracize them throughout all of open source and free software. That's insane. That is insane. I don't understand why someone would do that. I'm going to be very clear on this. I'm definitely right of center politically. I'm a pretty conservative guy. I don't care if someone is left of center. If someone wants to be a part of a project I work on, or a part of a project I run, and they're extremely left of center, great. What does that have to do with the software we're making? Why would I want to kick them out? Why would I want to make it so they're not welcome anywhere because they disagree with me? I don't understand that. I don't understand that mentality. And so this goes on and on, where it's just dividing and destroying massive parts of the entire tech industry. As another example, just because this Nazi thing, where people get labeled as a Nazi by these extreme leftists, it just is so pervasive. The editor of OSNews.com actually came out and labeled me a Nazi, which is funny because I'm Jewish. I'm really not a Nazi. And that's kind of obvious. He repeatedly labeled me a Nazi over the course of months and made it very clear that I needed to be killed because I'm a Nazi, and that all Nazis needed to die, and I am a Nazi, and I, Lunduke, need to be murdered. This is a tech journalist, right? And this is, now here's a crazy thing. Tech journalist calls other tech journalist a Nazi that needs to die, threatens murder. Do any of the other extreme leftist tech news outlets cover this even a little bit? It's news. I'm telling you straight up, if someone on Fox News or CNN came out and said the highest ratings journalist on the other platform is a Nazi and we need to find that person and murder them today, yeah, that'd be news. That'd be news all over social media. That would be news all over all of the major news outlets, and they would never stop covering that bit of news. Did a single tech news outlet cover this in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not. Why? Because most of them are extreme left-wing. I'm not saying that they are centrist or moderate Democrats. They are Marxists and communists. And I'm being very clear about this. I'm not saying that as a derogatory statement. I'm simply saying that's what they are, what they identify are, what their politics are, and that's I can't think of other words to use. This is why I kind of gave everyone the heads up. We got to be using very political language here because we need to be very clear about what we're talking about. Right? So if we've got these large groups of Marxists and communists who are declaring that not only are people who are centrist or right-leaning, are they evil and Nazis, but that they need to die. And they're not welcome within open source projects, within Linux projects, and the like. It's nonstop. A NixOS project, by the way, banned me from everything. I just want to mention that because I think this is hilarious. After I covered NixOS doing their Nazi purge, they banned me everywhere. Quote, Brian Lunduke has been suspended on all platforms. Guess how many platforms I was on related to NixOS? It starts with 0. There's none. But they preemptively were so terrified of me that they banned me everywhere. Now, this is impacting all of these open source projects, and it's impacting the companies, and it's coming from the companies that sponsor many of those projects. I mean, looking at the Red Hat stuff, lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit are rolling in, hitting Red Hat and IBM. Because, why? Because the people who are extreme leftists and inclusivity activists are purposefully discriminating against people based on race and gender and political orientation and even religion, and attacking them, right? And saying we won't hire people who are the wrong gender, or we won't hire people because they're the wrong skin color, right? We're seeing this happening at IBM, we're seeing this happening at Red Hat and Netflix, and on and on and on. And it's impacting the entirety of the tech ecosystem. And this is really one of the reasons why I needed to bring this up today, because it's not a one-off issue. And it's not just a political issue. This isn't something that, is just in the realm of politics. This is a practical impact. This is having a practical, real-world impact on the people who are volunteering and working on free and open source software, the people who are software developers and others simply looking for work in the tech industry, looking to work in computers and software and the like. This is directly and profoundly impacting them. This is even impacting users of all of the software, because now people are being told flat out that they're not welcome to even use the software created by many of these people, whether it's Elementary or Asahi or openSUSE or blah, 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 blah. You're not welcome to use that software if you are not an extreme left-wing Marxist or communist, and you must actively, in most of these cases, wave the transgender flag. Like, you must actively promote transgenderism. Again, I'm going to be very clear on this. I do not care what someone's political ideas are. I do not care how they perceive themselves or what they want to call themselves. I don't care. They can be a part of the Lunduke Journal community. They can be a part of any project I work on. They can interact with me. I don't care, right? We can still be reasonable and thoughtful and kind to each other, even if we disagree fundamentally. It used to be that when you went to a job, you left your politics at home. You left your religion at home, right? And you came to work and you worked. That didn't mean you couldn't talk about personal things at work, of course, but just certain things you just kind of, for the most part, leave at home. This was a common thing. This was that way for forever. And this avoided a lot of problems within the workplace. Well, now we have kind of the exact opposite problem. Within not just your job, but people's hobbies within software, you must pass essentially a purity test. You must essentially sit down and have struggle sessions with creators and moderators and leadership and board members of open source and free software projects and tech companies to ensure that you 100% actively support whatever their political cause is. And in every single case, those political causes are extreme left-wing causes. So what do we do here, right? Because we've listed out a number of things here, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more. If you look through the Lunduke Journal's reporting over the last, say, 9-10 months, you will find so many more than this. So it's obvious this is an issue. And it's obvious that it's impacting contributors and employees and end users of this software. So what do we do? Because clearly this is destroying, this is ripping apart the entirety of the open source free software and even just in general, the computer world. How do we fix this? Well, I mean, there's a lot of potential options, but I think first and foremost, we have to at least be willing to talk about it publicly, openly. And we have to get to a point where all the people on the extreme left have to be willing to talk also. That's the only way I can think of to actually start working on solving this without just having a civil war. I mean, we're at the point right now where we're going to have a significant number of left-wing software projects and right-wing software projects. Now, the crazy thing here is the right-wing software projects will allow anyone to use them, right? Like Hyprland is a good example, because I don't even know what the political alignment of the guy behind Hyprland is. He's kept it pretty close to his vest. He's just said that everyone is welcome. And because of that, he's been labeled as a Nazi and a right wing, which is weird because those are opposites, because Nazism is extreme left wing. Just going to put that out to the side for a minute. But he's got over here the Hyprland project, and so that includes anyone who wants to be there, right? But people who want to attack Hyprland are going to have their own software projects over here, but they will only allow left-leaning people in it. So we're going to have this continual splintering and fracturing of software projects across the entire open source and closed source ecosystems, and I don't see how that's a positive. Right? Like, I'm working on a few software projects myself right now, and I'm taking a similar approach to Hyprland, where anyone can be a part of it. But because I do that, and because I happen to be a bit right-leaning politically, I will be labeled as a Nazi by all the extreme leftists, and extreme leftists will continue to attack anything that I work on. That just will happen. But I will sit over here and say everyone is welcome. This is going to be a problem. This is going to be a bigger problem as time goes on if it doesn't get resolved in some way soon. And one of the big things that's going to happen here is we're going to see the companies that are funding a great deal of this work, which means companies like Red Hat and IBM and Intel. They're going to have a moment where they say, you know what, maybe we should stop being so exclusionary and discriminatory, right? They're going to have that moment. There's a big thing coming. You can smell it. You can feel the electricity in the air. But we need to be able to talk about this topic openly. Otherwise, there is zero chance of things working out well. That's just how it is. I'm a big fan of sunlight is the best disinfectant. So this is why I'm bringing all this up, because all those topics, by the way, all these things that we've talked about today, all these news stories about NixOS and Hyprland and openSUSE and everything else, none of them have gone away. I've reported on them, and the reporting has gotten a huge amount of traction. I see the stats of how many people have read these articles. It's off the charts. It's bigger than any of the articles that I ever wrote for Linux Journal magazine, for Network World, or any of the other magazines I used to write for. These articles have been read more times than, I'm pretty sure, darn near any article written by any tech publication in existence today. So I know people are concerned about the topic. But yet, not one of these news stories has hit a point where the projects have fixed themselves. NixOS is still in utter turmoil after committing their purge of Nazis. openSUSE has continued to ban anyone who expresses even the slightest conservative thought, or even centrist thought. I hear about it almost weekly, it seems like. It's just one thing after another. The leadership of Asahi and Elementary have continued to go on the warpath, just attacking anyone who is centrist or right of center, and declaring that they cannot be a part of their project, right? It's been, if anything, many of them have ramped up even further. So things haven't gotten better, they've gotten worse. And I'm going to keep on reporting about these things because it seems like there's at least a new one every week, or every other week. There's a new big project that is ostracizing or banning their main contributors because they found out someone voted for Trump. I mean, heck, the Linux Foundation banned people from events simply for wearing a red MAGA hat. Did they ever apologize for that? No, they didn't. In fact, they've continued even further down their very, very leftist road. So we're going to keep talking about this. We're going to keep talking about this. I want to thank everyone who supports the work of the Lunduke Journal by being a subscriber over at lunduke.locals.com. Go to lunduke.com, click on all the links, subscribe over there to support the work I do. Because it's unfortunate that the Lunduke Journal is the only outlet covering all of these things. It is extraordinarily unfortunate for all of us. It's fortunate for me from a business point of view because I see the numbers of new subscribers coming in. We're growing like gangbusters. The amount of people reading these articles I know is bigger than anything that CNET or Wired or the Register is getting on these numbers. Yeah. And that's great for me from a business point of view, but I would give that up gladly if I could get some of these other outlets to start reporting the news. Because what we're talking about here are some of the biggest, most pivotal, most impactful stories in all of open source, free software, Linux, and even just the tech industry over the last year. And none of them are reporting on it. It is extremely unfortunate. But thank you. Thank you to all the subscribers who helped to make it possible for me to report on all this. Spread the news. Spread the word. Spread this video or this podcast around. Share some of these articles around. Ask these projects why they're not addressing these issues. Ask them. Bring this up more regularly. I mean, in all reasonableness, you're going to get banned from these projects if you bring these up. Most of these projects have a rule where you're not allowed to mention my name to them or you get banned. GNOME even has an official policy where they will ban you if you say the word Lunduke. That's an official policy. It's ridiculous. And why is that? Because I'm covering this stuff. And it is pivotal to their business, to their bottom line, that this stuff not get covered. Because they are seeking to be exclusive. They are seeking to discriminate. They are seeking to harm people. And anyone who's not extreme leftists. And the more people that know about that, the more harm it's going to do to their business, unless they fix it. And they're not going to fix it because they don't want to. It's their religion. I don't know why. If you watch this or listen to this episode and you came away from it feeling like you were attacked because you're on the political left, if you're not communist and Marxist, if you're not one of the inclusivity activists who's excluding people and discriminating against people, I'm not attacking you. In fact, we can still be buds. We can still grab burgers. We're cool. I'm concerned specifically about the extremists that are causing so much damage. The extremists who have managed to take over control of so many open source projects. It is a big problem. All right, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about right now. It's important. I'm going to get yelled at. A lot of people are going to be like, darn it, Lunduke, I want to hear about happy-dappy technology. Listen. I like computers. I like software. I like old software. I like new software. I love it. It's my happy place. I would love nothing more than to sit down every day and talk about mid-1980s and mid-1990s software and hardware. I could talk about RS-232 connected peripherals for a month straight and not get bored about it. And there's no politics in any of that. The reason this has to get talked about is because this specific issue is utterly and completely destroying the world that I love, the world of software and computers. I love it. And it's destroying it. It is ripping it apart. It is hurting people in it directly. It is hurting users and developers and contributors. It is directly impacting the quality of the software. It is directly impacting what software is available and how people feel about their computers when they use them. That's not cool. And someone needs to talk about it. And so I'm going to talk about it. And you know what? When it doesn't need to get talked about anymore, I'm going to have an entire month where I talk about RS-232 connected peripherals. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes across the inner tubes, I do declare, end broadcast.